Hi, welcome to Drum Lessons with Clay Dukes. So we're just going to go over some things that we went over on the last lesson. Parts of the kit, different types of the body that are important, and terminology or language that goes into playing drums. So the first one we'll go into is a word called independence. The word independence means just what your limbs do when they're operating independently of themselves. So what your right hand is doing by itself, independent. What your right leg is doing on the bass drum, its own independence. Or the hi-hat with your left foot on the left hi-hat stand. Independence on that. All those collectively are what in the drumming world is known as a drummer's, how good is the drummer's independence? How good can he use his limbs each on their own to make up what he needs to make up? So moving on to the next thing, we've got tempo. Then we've got time signature and the overall vibe of the song. Those three things are key things for a drummer to know, because if you're trying to play a John Mayer song, the overall vibe of the song is more jazzy-ish, blues chords, whatnot. You don't want to play too quickly at certain points and then slow down too fast, or vice versa, play too slow and then speed up too fast. So you need to know the vibe of the song, and you need to know, is it a fast song? Does it have some gospel stuff in it? Whatnot, things like that. Then you need to know the time signature. So time signatures, we'll talk about that for a brief moment, and then we'll get into the rest of the lesson, and it'll just kind of go from there. But time signatures are extremely important because when you sit down at a kit and you've got your band with you, they're going to play a song, and the song is going to be orchestrated around where the notes fall in that song. So for instance, you've got a song in 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's a song in 4/4. Or in a lot of songs, you've got the time signature 6/8. So you've got this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you've got something like that. It's important to know that, because if you go into the song and you don't know the time signature, you might get lost and you might have to try and find your way back into the groove of the song. Whereas if you knew it beforehand, you could start the song off and go right into it. Then we've got stick control. Stick control is extremely important because when you're starting out to play the drums, a lot of young drummers and even old drummers, sometimes when they get lazy, we all get lazy at points in our professional careers, even whatever trade you do. Trick is to not get lazy, but in the drumming world, a lot of people will do something like this. They'll start playing a beat. Now, they'll play that beat, but instead of playing with their hands like this, hands, I mean more so in the hands wrist area, they'll play it more in the forearm, so they'll get something like this. See how that's a lot more rigid and a lot more stiff? That's going to cause you a lot of problems in the long run, because say you're playing a set with your band, you're at a church, you're at a gig, whatever's going on. If you're doing that for a long period of time, you're going to cause some serious muscle issues here. You're going to get cramps, and it's just going to be a lot harder for you to play the way you want to play. So you want to focus on your stick control. So you want to play, again, more loose rather than rigid. So you want to give it more of a, see how I'm using that wrist there? Versus you don't want to lock this up. You don't want to lock this up at all, because overall it's just going to cause you more problems in the long run. Then we've got something called beat placement. And beat placement is important because let's say we're playing in the time signature of 4/4. Where do we want the snare to land? or where do we want the hi-hat to open? Because you know you've got a hi-hat that can open and close. So you've got a closed hi-hat right now, and you've got an open hi-hat right there. So what part of the beat do you want to do, an open or closed hi-hat? Where do you want to put the snare? Where do you want to put the bass drum? Where do you want to put a tom, floor tom, or a ride or crash cymbal, etc.? Whatever, how many pieces you have on your kit. It's important to know the beat placement because you don't want the song to feel like it's going in a direction that it's not intended for. I'll show you what I mean by that. So we'll do a simple time signature of 4/4 with a pretty slow tempo, and we'll do, I'll just put the snare wherever, and then I'll put it in a different spot, and you tell me which one works better. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. You see how you can have a certain type of feel when you place the beat a certain way. And to give you another example, let's do something more like with a little bit busier bass drum so you can see a little bit more pronounced on the snare here. So you got. So you get that feel that the snare is just really punching into the song. And you hear this a lot in songs, especially back in the day, like an artist like James Brown. So James Brown, you've got. You got a real fat snare, and that's important in those old songs because that snare is really driving things. Or going back to like what I was saying earlier with an artist like John Mayer, you know, you've got a snare that's not punchy, but you've got a super fat bass drum. So the beat placement of that bass drum is going to bring out the elements of that song that really drive you into that feel. So like in the John Mayer song, let's think of a good song. Maybe Bold as Love. And you got. Might be getting the songs mixed up, but that was the overall concept of it, is that that bass drum falls right on there and then the snare leads right back. So it's like giving you that upbeat so you can really push through with the song. Another thing to consider is when you sit down to play that not all kits are going to be set up like this. So the test of a good drummer is not, do I have the perfect setup, but can I play in what is called in the pocket. And playing in the pocket is something that comes about obviously as you practice more and more and more and more, and you get more developed as a drummer. But you would want to rather play in the pocket rather than say you've got 5+ cymbals to choose from. You want to stay in there so that you can make sure you're being the drummer that you need to be. Let's make sure here, make sure that I'm going over everything I want to go over with you. So we went over the overall vibe of the song. We went over the time signature. We went over the tempo. We went over the beat placement. We went over the independence. So let's kind of break things down a little bit more for like a beat. Let's do a beat in 4/4 to show you how to play a beat. So you got your hi-hat going to be on 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Carrying it all the way through. 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to continue that, but we're going to add the foot, the kick, the bass. We're going to add that on as soon as we start it. We're going to hit it on the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just keep that there. Let's add the snare in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is in the time signature of 4/4. You've got the hi-hat playing on the 1, 2, 3, and 4 beat. You got the snare falling on the 4 and the kick starting on the 1. So that's just a simple breakdown of that. Or you could have something like and as your skills progress, that would fall into something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, da da ba, ba ba ba, ba ba ba. See how that's still in the 4/4 time signature, but you're just putting the beat placement, and emphasizing on what part of the kit. And then for something like 6/8 time signature. And then you could do the same thing on the kick. You can hit it twice there. And then you just slide into it and take it wherever you want. So let's just brief recap of everything we went over and the importance. Stick control. You don't want to play too firm. It's going to cause you problems in the long run. You want to be loose. Tempo. How fast? How slow? How many BPMs, beats per minute, are in that song? And professionals have in-ear monitors with click tracks and all that, which we can get to at a later point. But you want to know the tempo. Just usually the drummer starts that, so it's important for you to get practicing in certain songs just all over the time signatures and tempo ranges. And then you got 4/4 time signature, 6/8 time signature that we went over. The overall song vibe. The beat placement. Placements of the beats to make your drum kit do the things that you want it to do. And lastly, independence. The most important word for a drummer probably, other than just doing the basic things, staying in the pocket like we mentioned a brief moment ago. But the independence. You want to be able to practice getting your limbs to do all the various things that you want them to do. And that's going to come in time. And just keep practicing and you'll get there one day. Have fun.